My parents secretly installed tracking software on my computer to manage my savings account and withdrew $250,000 that I had saved for a decade to buy a house. When I discovered it, my father mockingly said, "Thanks for your naivety. Your money has now secured your brother's bright future." I couldn't help but laugh, as the money they took was actually a representation of my hard work. The scent of my small apartment usually offered a comforting, if somewhat mundane, blend of old paperbacks and the faint metallic tang of late-night coffee. For 10 years, it had been the backdrop to a singular, unwavering focus: building a future. That future was encapsulated in a number, a steadily growing figure in my online savings account: $250,000. It represented $250,000 I had scraped together, notably through brown bag lunches eaten at my desk as colleagues went out, faded shoes worn an extra season, tempting vacations deferred, and extra freelance projects squeezed into already packed weekends. All of it added up to that number. It was more than just money. It was the physical manifestation of my self-reliance, my discipline, and my quiet ambition. It was the down payment for the simple, sturdy house with a small patch of grass I envisioned late at night, a place where I could finally plant roots that were truly my own. Quite simply, it symbolized my independence. My parents, bless their hearts, always had plenty of unsolicited opinions about my finances. It wasn't gentle guidance from seasoned investors. It was a constant critique, disguised as concern. "Are you sure that savings account is the best place for your money, Michael?" my mother would ask during our obligatory Sunday evening calls, her voice laced with that specific brand of parental anxiety that often felt like judgment. "Inflation is a concern, you know, and real estate prices just keep climbing. Maybe you should consider putting some of that capital to work, perhaps helping David get his venture off the ground." David was my younger brother, the son around whom the entire family seemed to revolve. His needs were paramount, his potential boundless, and every step he took was a cause for celebration, often accompanied by financial outlay. His college tuition required significant parental sacrifice, a fact broadcast to every relative and family friend. David's brilliant, vaguely defined startup idea that promised to disrupt something, anything, was another reason for more sacrifices and announcements of his inevitable world-changing success. My own quiet accomplishments, graduating college debt-free through scholarships and part-time jobs, landing a stable engineering role, and steadily building my savings, were met with a nod and a dismissive, "That's nice, Michael," before the conversation inevitably circled back to David's latest grant application or networking opportunity. My role was clear: the dependable, quiet one, the support system expected to contribute without needing recognition or reciprocation. I was the sturdy, invisible foundation they built upon, never realizing they saw me as merely expendable material. My blind spot was a vast, echoing cavern. I genuinely believed their subtle manipulations, constant suggestions, and obvious favoritism towards David were just awkward expressions of love, clumsy attempts to guide their quieter son. I mistook their ingrained need for control for genuine care and their expectation of my unwavering support for a healthy model of family unity. Their house on Maple Lane, the one I grew up in, was a shrine to manufactured perfection. The lawn was always meticulously manicured, throw pillows plumped to defiant perfection, and family photos on the mantelpiece strategically arranged to showcase milestones. Even as a child, I felt the performance simmering beneath the surface. The air inside always carried the faint scent of my mother's signature floral air freshener, an almost aggressive attempt to mask any less than perfect odor. The savings account itself was a relic of simpler times, or perhaps a testament to my naivety. I had opened it in high school, and it remained linked to my parents' address for paper statements long after I moved out. It was just one of those administrative details I never got around to changing. More significantly, I had given them the online login details years ago. I barely remembered why. Maybe they needed to transfer a small sum for something trivial, or perhaps they insisted on helping me set up online access. And I went along with it, trusting implicitly that it was a one-time thing, a fleeting moment of convenience or parental assistance that I never dreamed could be weaponized. The first sign, looking back, was so subtle it was almost ghost-like. My work laptop, a relatively new and powerful machine I relied on daily, began acting sluggish. Programs froze, Files took agonizing seconds to open, and websites spun endlessly before loading. I ran antivirus scans, deleted old programs, and optimized storage. Everything I knew how to do, but nothing helped. The performance issues persisted, a nagging annoyance that dragged on my productivity. It felt like a tiny, persistent itch I couldn't scratch, a minor frustration I dismissed as impending hardware failure. Then came the questions. Sharper, more invasive, delivered with that same saccharine layer of concern. Are you really still planning on that house next year, Michael? Prices are astronomical now, you know. Are you absolutely sure your savings are keeping pace? Maybe you should reconsider your strategy. My mother's voice on the phone felt like tiny needles pricking my skin. A vague, unsettling feeling coiled in my gut during those calls, a sense of being overly scrutinized, as if my plans were somehow open for public commentary and judgment. I tried to shake it off, attributing it to my own stress about the big purchase. One evening, troubleshooting the relentless computer lag, I opened the task manager scrolling through the list of running processes. Most were familiar system tasks or common applications, but then I saw a name I didn't recognize. It looked innocuous at first glance, a string of technical-sounding words. A quick, cautious search on a secondary device brought up chilling results. This particular process name, or variations of it, was commonly associated with remote access and monitoring software. Software designed to log keystrokes, capture screenshots, access files, and even activate webcams and microphones. My blood ran cold. Why would that be on my work laptop? Had I clicked a suspicious link, downloaded something by accident? A sickening thought began to form in my mind, a dark tendril creeping from the edges. No, not them. Couldn't be them. The people who raised me, my parents. But the questions, the timing, the access I had given them years ago coalesced into a horrifying possibility I desperately wanted to disbelieve. My hands trembled visibly as I navigated to my online banking portal later that night. The cursor seemed to crawl across the screen, mirroring the dread building in my chest. The familiar layout loaded, the numbers I had watched grow for a decade. My eyes scanned the primary balance, expecting to see the solid six-figure sum. It wasn't there. The number was minuscule, barely enough to cover a month's rent. A choked sound escaped my throat. I clicked into the transaction history, scrolling with increasing desperation, my breath coming in ragged gasps. And there, it was stark and undeniable. A single massive outgoing transfer dated just last Tuesday, amount $250,000. The world tilted on its axis. My chest tightened, not metaphorically but physically, like a crushing weight settling on my sternum. It felt as if someone had wrapped barbed wire around my lungs, making each breath a painful effort. This wasn't possible. It had to be a mistake, a hack, a glitch. Not them, not my parents, not my family. That money represented 10 years of my life, my future, my dream of a safe, independent space. It was gone. Vanished. I drove to their house on Maple Lane the next afternoon. The drive was a blur, my mind racing, trying to construct a scenario where this wasn't what it looked like. The perfect facade greeted me, meticulously pruned rose bushes, a freshly sealed driveway. The air inside was thick with the cloying artificial scent of my mother's floral spray, now feeling less like a pleasant aroma and more like a suffocating gas. David was there, stretched out on the pristine white sofa, tapping away on his tablet, looking utterly unburdened. My parents sat opposite me, their initial expressions of mild surprise at my unannounced visit hardening into guarded caution as they took in my face. I didn't bother with pleasantries. My voice was thin, strained, barely louder than a whisper, the words scraped raw by terror and disbelief. My savings, $250,000. It's gone. Transferred out. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, a practiced gesture of shock. Oh, Michael, how absolutely dreadful. Were you hacked? Did you click on something you shouldn't have? My father leaned forward from his armchair, his brow furrowed in a convincing show of concern. Are you quite sure, son? Are you reading the statement correctly? Online banking can be confusing. I pulled up my phone, forcing my shaking fingers to navigate to the transaction log. The screen felt slick in my hand as I thrust it toward them, the undeniable evidence glowing starkly. It's right here, A single transfer of $250,000 last Tuesday to an account I don't recognize. Their eyes scanned the screen. My mother's face, usually composed, paled visibly under her makeup. My father's jaw tightened, the mask of concern slipping away to reveal something harder beneath. The performance began to crumble, revealing the cold, calculating core beneath. "Well, Michael," my father began, his voice losing the feigned sympathy and taking on that familiar authoritative edge that brooked no argument, "we facilitated a transfer for family." Facilitated for family? My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat. "You facilitated without asking me. It's my house money. 10 years of saving, gone in an instant. How could you?" My mother interjected, her voice rising in sudden, sharp indignation. "Don't be dramatic, Michael. It's family money. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is for the family. We helped you when you were young. We supported you. We invested in you." "Invested?" I whispered, feeling the word itself was a betrayal. "You stole my down payment. You stole my future." My father stood up, rising to his full height, his voice booming, slightly filling the room with its resonant power. David finally looked up from his tablet, a flicker of confusion on his face, sensing the shift in the air. "Steal is a ridiculous word. We needed it. David's startup needed a final significant investment to secure its future. This is about securing his future." My voice was louder now, raw with pain, disbelief, and a growing cold fury. "You took everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed for." My father's lips curled into a thin, smug, utterly cruel smile. His eyes met mine, cold and victorious. This was the moment etched in my memory, the culmination of a lifetime, of subtle dismissals and overt favoritism. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping back to a low, cutting tone, dripping with condescension. "Thanks for your naivety, Michael. Your money has now secured your brother's bright future." Something inside me shattered, but not in the way they expected. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was a bizarre, almost detached recognition of the sheer breathtaking arrogance, the complete and utter lack of understanding of the reality of the situation they had created. A strange pressure built in my chest, behind my eyes. A choked sound escaped my lips. It wasn't a sob, it was the beginning of a laugh. A dark, bitter, utterly bewildering laugh that felt alien coming from my own throat. They stared at me, their faces a mixture of confusion and affront. The smugness faltered on my father's face, replaced by irritation. "What in God's name are you laughing at?" my mother demanded, her eyes narrowing into suspicious slits. David looked visibly uncomfortable, sensing the scene was spiraling beyond his comprehension. I couldn't stop the strange surge of dark amusement, mixed with a cold, hard resolve hardening in my gut. The laughter was shaky, disbelieving, almost manic. "You think you took my future?" I managed, my voice trembling but firming with each word. "You think you won? You think you played me for a fool?" I shook my head slowly, the laugh fading into a grim, unwavering smile that felt foreign on my face. "You have no idea. The money you took, it wasn't just my savings. Not anymore. By taking it, you just sealed your own fate." That moment was the definitive turning point. The shock, the raw pain, the feeling of being utterly stripped bare. It didn't break me. It purified me, burning away the last vestiges of blind loyalty and naive hope. It forged something new and hard in the crucible of betrayal. Cold, focused determination replaced devastation. This wasn't just about recovering funds anymore, though that was part of it. This was about justice, about exposing the rot beneath the perfect glossy surface they presented to the world, and about protecting myself from the terrifying reality of what they were capable of. I left their house that day not broken, but burning with a cold, clear fire. The cloying floral air freshener smell clung to my clothes, a sickening reminder of the artificiality I was leaving behind. I drove back to my quiet, empty apartment, the silence amplifying the chaotic thoughts swirling in my head. I couldn't stay there, not with that software potentially still lurking, watching. I wiped my laptop clean, a necessary but almost violent act, scrubbing away years of files and memories, digital fingerprints ensuring no further information could be compromised. Then I packed a small bag and went to Emma's. Emma lived simply and intentionally in a part of the city far removed from the suffocating, perfect sameness of suburban Maple Lane. Her apartment building was older, quirky, and filled with character. She opened the door, took one look at my drawn, pale face, eyes wide with shock, and pulled me into a fierce, silent hug. The scent of her place was different. Old paperbacks, fresh coffee brewing, something clean and earthy that spoke of genuine, life, not manufactured presentation. It smelled safe. I poured out the story haltingly at first, the words catching in my throat, then in a torrent. The software discovery, the vanishing money, my father's cruel mocking boast, and the bizarre, almost uncontrollable laughter that followed. Emma listened patiently, her expression shifting from concern to disbelief to a quiet, simmering anger that matched my own. "Oh, Mike," she murmured, her voice low and steady. "I always knew something was off with them. The way they treated you, the David show. But this is on a whole other level." Her background in cybersecurity wasn't just a job, it was a deep passion, an intuitive understanding of the digital world that was utterly foreign to me. She understood the implications of tracking software immediately. "Keyloggers, remote access, screen captures," she murmured, her fingers already flying across the keyboard of her own clean machine. "It's not just about seeing what you're doing, it's about gaining access to accounts, to files, to sensitive, personal info, especially if you use that computer for banking or anything private." We started digging, working late into the night, fueled by adrenaline and Emma's endless supply of strong coffee. Not on my wiped machine, but by accessing records I could legally obtain. Old bank statements, logs from my online accounts showing access times, anything that predated the wipe. Emma focused on tracing the $250,000 transfer. It went to a domestic account, but then within hours, it fragmented, flowing out in a series of complex, rapid transactions involving a web of shell companies and accounts, with generic, corporate-sounding names. It wasn't going directly to David's startup, or a known vendor, or even a simple investment fund. This was textbook money laundering. This wasn't just financially toxic parents stealing from a son to fund a favored sibling. This was part of a much larger, far more sophisticated criminal operation. My parents weren't just selfish and manipulative. They were career criminals running a complex financial fraud network. The money they took from me was just a small piece of their larger scheme, laundered through various accounts or used to fund their illicit activities. The realization was a cold, hard stone settling in my gut. Their carefully curated image, their obsession with appearances, their relentless pushing of David's success. It wasn't just annoying family dysfunction, it was a carefully constructed smokescreen for something far darker and more dangerous. The weight of it was crushing. But then Emma found something else, something directly linked to the tracking software logs she managed to recover through some digital wizardry I didn't fully grasp. Records showing which files they had accessed remotely on my computer after installing the software. My tax documents, copies of loan applications from years ago, identity verification files I'd saved, digital scans of my driver's license and social security card. They weren't just stealing my money. They were actively using my identity, my personal information, obtained via the tracking software they secretly installed, and my compromised accounts to facilitate their fraud network. Opening bank accounts in my name, applying for credit, potentially signing documents, leaving a trail that could point back to me if their operation was discovered. The nausea returned. Worse than before. They hadn't just hurt me financially and emotionally, they were actively trying to set me up to make me potentially legally liable, implicating me in their crimes without my knowledge or consent. They didn't just steal my money. I choked out the words, thick with horror. They stole my name. They were trying to make me the fall guy. David remained a painful peripheral figure in this deepening nightmare. Was he complicit? Emma's analysis of the transaction flows didn't directly tie him to the complex laundering or shell companies, only to receiving significant funds from our parents. It seemed he was either genuinely oblivious, basking in the benefits of his favored status without asking inconvenient questions, or willfully ignorant, choosing not to see the man behind the curtain as long as the money kept flowing. This made him less a knowing co-conspirator in the deepest fraud and more a primary privileged beneficiary of their extensive crime, blinded by ambition and the narrative our parents had fed him his entire life. But I knew with a chilling certainty, deep in my bones, that he would side with the parents when the full truth came out. His image, his carefully constructed facade of success built on their money, depended entirely on their narrative remaining intact. Armed with the rapidly accumulating evidence, the undeniable logs showing the tracking software installation and remote access, the complex transaction trails pointing irrevocably to the shell companies and their fraudulent network, the proof of identity theft using my documents, we began to see the sheer scale of their operation. This wasn't just dozens of transactions, it was hundreds, potentially involving millions of dollars, and horrifyingly impacting countless real people. Elderly individuals targeted by fake investment schemes, small businesses lured into phony deals, families robbed of their savings. My parents, the pillars of the community facade on Maple Lane, were predators preying on the vulnerable to fund their lavish lifestyle and David's golden path. This is where the fake money twist fully solidified, explaining that bizarre, almost hysterical laughter back at their house, the feeling that persistent unease from the initial computer glitches and odd parental questions before the $250,000 vanished. I had acted on a gut feeling, a whisper of intuition that something was wrong. It was a move born more of undefined paranoia than concrete proof, but it saved me. Weeks earlier, I had quietly and meticulously transferred my entire $250,000 savings into a brand new, completely separate account at a different financial institution they knew nothing about and had no access to. The Gila account they were monitoring, the one they thought held my life savings, was a decoy. It had a smaller, less significant balance, maybe a few automated transfers scheduled to make it look active but less tempting for a full theft. What they saw and what they stole that day wasn't my decade of sacrifice. What they stole was based on the precise dates and amounts Emma traced, money that they themselves had just routed through my compromised account as a brief hidden stop in their own fraud network's complex international laundering process. By stealing it out, they didn't take my future. They took their own hot money, leaving a shining, undeniable digital trail directly from their larger fraud network straight back to them, routed specifically through an account linked to me, the very person whose identity they were simultaneously stealing. My almost laughter in that moment was the sheer dark, cosmic irony of it all. They thought they were so clever, so untouchable, picking my pocket with impunity. But they had walked directly into a trap I unknowingly helped set, providing the precise, irrefutable piece of evidence that would dismantle everything they had built on lies. They had stolen their own trap. I repeated this to Emma, the realization both terrifying in its implications and profoundly satisfying. The decision was now not just clear, but imperative. This wasn't something I could handle alone or confine to the realm of family issues. The fraud was too extensive, the number of potential victims too high, and my own legal exposure from the identity theft too real. We needed law enforcement. We needed justice, not just for me, but for everyone else they had harmed. Working tirelessly with Emma, we compiled our evidence into a detailed chronological case file. Transaction logs, IP addresses, correlating tracking software access with fraudulent activity, screenshots of the software interface caught by accident, names of shell companies, leads on potential victims identified through public records tied to the scamming patterns. We consulted discreetly with the lawyer I had initially contacted, an objective outsider who confirmed the strength and validity of our evidence. She guided us on the best way to approach the authorities to ensure I wasn't mistakenly implicated due to the identity theft. Given the scope of the financial network, likely crossing state lines, the FBI was the appropriate agency. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, recounting the painful story over and over, presenting the technical and financial evidence. The agents were initially cautious, as they should be, but slowly, methodically, as Emma laid out the intricate digital breadcrumbs and I explained the family dynamics and the origins of the compromised account, their expressions turned from professional neutrality to grim seriousness. They saw the network. They saw the laundering. They saw the audacious identity theft. They saw the depth of the betrayal. They saw the potential for numerous victims. The climax wasn't a dramatic courtroom confrontation you see in movies. It was the cold, calculated arrival of justice. The agents worked swiftly and quietly, building their case and securing warrants. They planned the moment of exposure for a Tuesday morning when my parents would both be present at the nondescript suburban office building they used as a legitimate-looking front for part of their operation. I wasn't present for the arrests themselves, but Emma and I were nearby, waiting with the tension of a physical wire pulled taut in my chest. The air felt thin and hard to breathe. I imagined the scene unfolding, the mundane office environment, the unexpected knock on the door, the sudden presence of federal agents displaying badges, the reading of rights. I later learned details from the case files and Emma's contacts, their initial arrogance, the carefully honed facade of legitimate business people dissolving instantly under the cold light of federal scrutiny. My father's face, moments before, likely composed and confident, reportedly turned ashen. My mother's carefully constructed composure shattered completely, her voice rising in frantic, nonsensical denials, shifting blame erratically. The sound of handcuffs clicking into place was stark and final, echoing in the sudden, stunned silence. They tried to deny everything, then to bargain, then sickeningly attempted to shift some culpability onto me based on the compromised accounts, a desperate final act of manipulation rooted in their inability to accept responsibility. But the evidence, the undeniable trail of their own hot money flowing directly through my account, the logs from the surveillance software they installed on my computer, the forged documents using my identity, was overwhelming and irrefutable. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom. News of the arrests, initially a local police blotter item, quickly escalated as the scale of the financial fraud network became apparent, picked up by regional and even national news outlets. My parents' carefully constructed public image, the perfect family on Maple Lane, imploded, the pieces scattered for everyone to see. Then came the social fallout, a secondary wave of pain, phone calls from confused relatives, some supportive, but many influenced by years of believing my parents' narrative, whispers in the community, and David, my brother, who had directly benefited from their crimes, reacted not with introspection, shame, or concern for the victims, but with furious self-serving denial and anger at me. He took to social media with a vengeance, painting a picture of a stable, respectable family destroyed by a troubled, ungrateful, jealous son making malicious false accusations out of pure spite. He posted thinly veiled attacks, twisted facts, using the very language our parents had instilled in him his whole life, that I was somehow less deserving, less capable, and now actively malicious. "He's trying to destroy us," he raged online, trying to rally their remaining sympathizers, throwing fuel on the fire of public opinion. It was a painful but ultimately clarifying final act of betrayal, confirming his complete absorption into the family's toxic dynamic and his willingness to protect his own privileged position at any cost. The legal process ground on, a slow, emotionally draining period of hearings, procedural steps, and eventually trial preparation or plea negotiations. My parents, stripped of their public facade and facing the harsh reality of the justice system, looked gaunt and aged. They showed little public remorse, still attempting to justify their actions or minimize their involvement. But the evidence compiled so painstakingly by Emma and me held firm. My real $250,000. Savings remained safe, untouched in the secure account I had moved it to. The money they had funneled through my account, the hot money they stole, was seized as part of the assets linked to the fraud case. Working closely with my lawyer and the authorities, providing documentation and clear testimony, I was able to navigate the legal complexities, ensuring my name was cleared from any potential liability associated with the identity theft and the fraud network they had tried to pin on me. It was a slow, arduous process of disentangling myself from the toxic criminal web they had woven, using my life as a thread. Reclaiming my reputation wasn't a single dramatic announcement. It was a deliberate, ongoing process, cooperating fully with law enforcement, calmly correcting misinformation when confronted, and eventually deciding to share my truth to take control of my own narrative. Months stretched into a year. The legal proceedings reached their conclusion. My parents faced significant prison sentences reflecting the scale and impact of their extensive financial crimes. Justice, in its cold legal form, was served. There was no dramatic courtroom apology, no moment of reconciliation, nothing that would provide a neat Hollywood ending to decades of dysfunction and betrayal. Just the somber pronouncement of consequences, the final, definitive legal boundary drawn between us. Emma remained a constant, a steadfast ally who had become more family to me than my blood relatives ever were. Our conversations weren't always about the past. We talked about our lives, our hopes, our shared experiences. Her presence was a quiet, unwavering comfort, a tangible reminder of what healthy, genuine connection felt like. The most significant step in my personal healing journey was finally buying my house. It wasn't the first one I dreamed of, the one I'd saved for over that lost decade, but it was mine. I remember the weight of the heavy key in my hand, the quiet click of the lock as I opened the front door for the first time alone. The house was empty. The rooms echoed slightly, a blank canvas waiting to be filled. But it didn't feel lonely. It felt full of possibility, safety, and peace. There were no oppressive family photos on the walls, no cloying artificial scents, just the clean smell of fresh paint and the promise of a future I would build on solid ground. It was my space, safe, secure, a physical boundary I had fought tooth and nail through unimaginable pain and betrayal to establish for myself. The scars from the betrayal remain. There's a part of me that will likely always be cautious, always double-checking the details, always trusting a little less easily. The pain of mourning the loss of the family I thought I had, even though that family was built on a foundation of lies and manipulation, is a dull ache that surfaces sometimes, particularly during holidays or when I see others with seemingly functional family connections. But it no longer defines me. The $250,000 was just money. The freedom, the authenticity, and the hard-won peace I found were priceless. Toxic family dynamics are pervasive, insidious, and deeply damaging. They twist your perception of yourself and the world, erode your self-worth, and make you question your own sanity. Setting boundaries isn't cruel or disrespectful. It's an essential act of self-preservation, a declaration that your well-being matters. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most, the ones who share your blood, are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But uncovering the truth, no matter how painful or shocking, is the necessary first step toward healing and reclaiming your life. Standing up for yourself, even when your own family is actively trying to tear you down and smear your name, is an act of profound courage and self-love. I built my house brick by painstaking brick with years of sacrifice, but I built my new life on the bedrock of truth, self-respect, and the courage to walk away from what was destroying me. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between your own well-being and maintaining a relationship with toxic family? What did it take for you to finally set a boundary that changed everything?